Hello there. In this session, let us take a look into how to build a beautiful card UI and also some of the common problems that you would face when building it. So, what is a card UI? Cards are UI components that display content and actions on a single topic, okay? So here we have some examples of cards. So this card is showing information, contact information about an entity, and this card is showing information about a place, and this card is showing information about an artist. So in general, a card has rounded corners and a shadow. The shadow comes from the amount of elevation we set on the card widget. Okay, so this is a generic card structure where you have a main title, a secondary text, and some description, and an image in the body, and couple of action buttons, and some quick action buttons. Okay, let us now take a look at how to build this card UI in Android Studio. Okay, here we have a sample code on how to build a card UI. Okay, let me explain what is going on here. So here we have a card widget, and this card widget is wrapped inside some padding, and it is wrapped inside center widget. This is all just to show this card at the center of the screen with some spacing around the card. Okay, and then the card itself can only take a single child, but that single child can be a multi-child layout like a column or a row, or it can be another single child depending on what you need to display inside the card. So in our case, we want to display this image, a text, and three text items, and then couple of buttons, and these are in vertical directions. So to keep all of them in a column widget makes more sense. So we have a column at the top level, and this column is taking three child widgets. The first one is a stack. So why a stack? That is because we have an image here and a text on top of another. So it makes sense to have a stack widget so that it can have an image and a text on top of that image. And the second part, we have three text items in one on top of another in vertical directions. So it is easier to keep them in another column. Well, let me show you. Like when you expand this padding, you can see we have a column with three text items, and this padding itself is providing the space around these three items. And then finally we have button bar, which is simply containing couple of buttons. Okay, um, now let us take a look at how to fix some of the common problems we will face when you build a card. As you can see here, this card is nowhere near to what we want. What we want is rounded corners, a lot of elevation, and to be able to tap. As you can see now, when I tap, it's not showing any touch feedback. So let us start with fixing the touch feedback. So when you are building a card widget, the first thing you have to do is to wrap your child or the body of your card in a widget called Inkwell widget. The Inkwell widget, it provides us the touch feedback. When you simply wrap it and save it, you are still not going to get the touch feedback. That is because you need to provide on tap method. Let us provide on tap method and do nothing in it, and let me save it now. Now if I tap on it, now you are able to see the touch feedback, right? But this image is still lying on top, and the ripple effect is not visible properly. Okay, let us fix that part now. So when you use an image inside a card widget, what we have to do is actually use a widget called ink image. We can't use the standard image widget. You have to use the ink image to get the touch feedback working. Let us replace this image asset with ink widget. Now if I tap on this, we get the nice touch feedback. So now we have the touch feedback working. Now what we are missing is the rounded corners. But by default, a card widget provides slightly rounded corners, as you can observe at these corners. At the top, because of this image, those rounded corners are also gone. So the better way to fix this is to use a property called clip behavior. This clip behavior with anti-alias will provide us with smooth rounded corners. If I save this now, you can see that these have changed into slightly rounded corners, but these rounded corners are not enough for you. Let us say then you can have a bigger rounded corners using the shape property. The shape provides you with a couple of options. You can have a rounded rectangular border or a circular border. Okay, so in this case, let's go with a rounded rectangular border and with a border radius of 12. Okay, let me save this. So now you have a nice round corners coming up. Now, if you want to show more shadow, we need to increase the elevation. Now, if I save it, you can see there is more shadow coming up and it looks nice. So finally, here we have our card UI with nice touch feedback and rounded corners and with proper shadow. Now you know how to build a beautiful card UI. Common problems you would usually face when you are building a card UI, mostly that fixing the touch feedback by wrapping it in an inkwell widget, and then if you have an image, wrap it in a ink image, and then finally set the clip behavior to anti-alias so that you get the smooth rounded corners. Now that's it for the card UI.